Hello, it's week 11 of season 4 of the Andy Griffith Show. Citizen's Arrest is our episode title this week. Barney, what's up? Andy and I are in the courthouse going through some old records, and we come across one document that reminds us that it was 10 years ago that I was sworn in as deputy. And Andy compliments me on how well I've done my job for 10 years. And I start getting all emotional about it, and so I had to go outside and sit in the squad car. And that's when I see Governor Tile make an illegal U-turn in his pickup truck. And I stopped in and I yell, I'd like some kind of explanation. U-turns, come on, explain. And first, Governor tries to get out of getting a ticket by saying he's got an emergency vehicle. And then he says I'm one of his friends. And I say, Governor, for 10 years I have yet to betray the public trust. Now I'd be some kind of public servant if I were to allow personal relationships to get in the way of my performance of my duty. And Gomer tells you to go up an alley and holler fish. And you try to reason with him. You say, Gomer, the law must be upheld no matter what. And you tell him that even a citizen who's not a police officer should make a citizen's arrest if he were to witness an illegal U-turn. And I give Goner his ticket, and then I make a U-turn to get back to the courthouse, and Goner comes out of his truck yelling citizen's arrest. And I say, no, Goner, this little black and white baby here is a real emergency vehicle. Now why don't you just stop trying to get even? And he says I wouldn't on no emergency call, and then I should write myself a ticket. And we start arguing, and a crowd gathers, and Andy comes up and asks what's going on. And I say, well, Nutsy here come running after me screaming, citizen's arrest, citizen's arrest. He's just sore because I give him a ticket. And Andy makes you write yourself a ticket because the crowd's getting big and loud and pretty angry. And in the courthouse I'm mad. I say to Andy, how could you humiliate me in front of the whole town like that? And Andy says he'll pay my fine for me. And I say nobody's going to pay my fine. And I turn in my equipment and I put myself in jail. And Andy says I'm making a fool out of myself. And I say, well, Andy, the laugh is on you. Because when word gets out that your deputy and your ex-best friend has been jailed for a minor offense, you'll be the fool. And Andy comes back in later and says, you going to stay there all night, Barney? And you say, yes, I sure am. And then Otis comes in drunk, and Andy puts him in the other cell, and Otis starts singing, and you say, be quiet, and you and Otis start arguing. And Andy says, be quiet, both of you. And then he leaves for the night, and the next morning Aunt Dee comes in with breakfast when Andy comes in. And I say, no thanks, Aunt Dee, and he can't make me neither. I'd just like to see him try to make me eat breakfast. I'd like to see him try. And then I let myself out, and I hand Andy a letter that I wrote overnight, and I say it's my resignation. Signed, sealed, and delivered. That means I'm quitting, you know. That's my resignation, and Andy accepts it. And then the audience sees Opie telling Gomer down at the filling station that you just quit, and that it all started with that citizen's arrest. And then while I'm in jail, a call comes in that Otis answers that there's been a holdup down at Wally's filling station. And Otis runs out and gets Andy. And Andy races down there in the squad car. But Andy finds out that Gomer made it up, hoping that both of you would come and work together again and that you'd want to come back as deputy after that. But you don't know that yet. And I come running up yelling, sorry I'm late, Andy. I knew you'd need somebody to cover you. What's the scoop, Governor? How many were there? Did you get a look at their faces? Were they wearing rubber masks? And when I find out it was a false alarm, I yell to Governor, do you realize the danger of a prank like that? And I give him tickets for a 215, a 923, and a 785. And then when Andy and I drive off and make a U-turn, Governor runs after us, screaming citizen's arrest again. And later I apologize to Andy for the whole thing, and we get back to work. And Andy puts my letter of resignation with all the others from the past that I changed my mind on. Well, I'm glad you came back to work. We'll see you next week for episode 12.